In this episode of the Western Zhou Dynasty, we are going to talk about the establishment of a new Eastern administrative center in Luoyang, and also the 3 pieces of advice that Zhou Gong gave to his young brother, the Prince of Kang. These pieces of advice will greatly accelerate the assimilation of Shang subjects into Zhou rule. Hello and welcome to the show where we share the myths, legends and histories of the Chinese people from the first creator to the last imperial dynasty. More than 6,000 years of stories, one video at a time. Now if you're trying to learn more about the rich culture and history of the Chinese people, then you, my friend, are definitely in the right place. Now, after King Wu of Zhou or Zhou Wu Wang successfully overthrew the Shang dynasty, his first priority was actually the assimilation of Shang subjects into Zhou rule. The failure of the Shang dynasty in assimilating the conquered peoples into their rule was a major contributing factor to their eventual downfall, and King Wu was determined not to make the same mistakes. Now, as the capital of the newly formed kingdom laid far to the west in the Zhou homelands, King Wu felt that it would be advantageous to set up a new administrative center in the east, which would greatly exert their influence over the newly conquered peoples and will also strengthen the new dynasty's hold over the realm. Now, after inspecting a few potential locations, it was decided that this new administrative city would be constructed at Luoyi. Luoyi is located in the basin area between the Luo River or Luo Shui and the Yi River or Yi Shui. It sits on a vast stretch of fertile land and it enjoyed good weather all year round. If properly developed, it had the potential to be the kingdom's new granary. Strategically speaking, it was protected to the north and south by mountain ranges, and to the west, it was guarded by Hangu Guan or Hangu Pass. To the east lay the very narrow Hulao Guan or Hulao Pass. Now, all this put together effectively meant that the entire area would form a choke point for all major traffic arteries that would traverse between the east and the west of the realm. Now, the Luo River or Luo Shui would be able to transport Zhou troops into the old Shang heartlands relatively quickly, and if they continue downstream, they will merge into the Yellow River, which would take them far into the northeast, into the states of Qi and Lu. The Ru River or Ru Shui and the Ying River or Ying Shui, which ran somewhere to the south of the newly constructed city, would be extremely helpful in transporting troops deep into the heartlands of the Huai tribes, which laid somewhere in the Huai River regions far to the southeast. It would not be an exaggeration to say that Luoyi was right smack in the center of the realm of the time, and it was the natural location to have a new capital constructed. Unfortunately, King Wu would pass away before the foundations could even be laid, and the entire project was passed on to Zhou Gong on King Wu's deathbed. However, events that happened soon after King Wu's passing would mean that the plans for the construction of this new city would be delayed even further. Now, as we mentioned in the previous episode, the rebellion of the 3 gods happened very soon after Zhou Gong declared himself regent of the Zhou dynasty. And this massive rebellion would greatly impress upon Zhou Gong the shortcomings of having the capital at Haojing. While defensively sound, being so far in the west meant that information could not reach the royal court in time, and thus delaying their responses to critical events that were happening across the realm. Therefore, the construction of a new eastern capital was right there at the top of the agenda once Zhou Gong put down the 3 guards and the revivalists led by Wu Geng. Now, as we mentioned before, Zhou Gong's eastern campaign did not just end after the subjugation of the 3 guards and Wu Geng's revivalists. He in fact continued to push further east. However, it was at this time that Shao Gong was sent to conduct a more detailed survey on the land that was earmarked for the construction of the new eastern capital, while Zhou Gong himself will continue to push further east into lands that lay beyond the current Zhou kingdom's borders. Shao Gong took his mission extremely seriously. After marking out the boundaries of the city walls and drawing up a rudimentary plan that confirmed the zones for ancestral temples, palace complexes, and a market square, Zhou Gong actually conducted a divination ritual which returned a result that showed extremely auspicious omens if a city was to be built according to the plans that he had drawn up. Now, after receiving this extremely positive report from Zhou Gong, Zhou Gong would actually personally make another trip to conduct an inspection of the site and the plans. After that was done, he submitted the blueprints and the divination results to King Cheng of Zhou or Zhou Cheng Wang for his final approval to kickstart the entire project. Once the king gave his approval for this massive project, Zhou Gong actually personally organized the manpower and logistics needed for the colossal undertaking, and under his guidance, it only took 1 year for the entire construction to be completed. Now, the new city was named Xin-Yi or Xin-Luo-Yi, which would literally translate to New City or New Luoyi, although it will also be more commonly known as Luoyang or Chengzhou. However, the most important name for this new city will be referred to in the Hezhun inscription that was found on a bronze drinking vessel that was cast to commemorate the founding of this new eastern administrative capital around 1039 BCE. The inscription will refer to this new city as Zhongguo, although in its time it will only mean the middle city or refer to an area around Luoyi. This term that we will now translate as the Middle Kingdom or know as the official Chinese name for the country of China, this term will make its first appearance in human history circa 1039 BCE. Once construction was completed on the new city of Luoyi, the question became who will be put in charge of the new capital. Now, both Zhou Gong and Zhao Gong were in favor of having King Cheng move the royal capital east and rule from Luoyi. However, considering that the newly conquered lands were still quite volatile and unsettled, and the people might not take too kindly to having the new ruling house moving into their heartland so soon, King Cheng opined that it might be better for him to continue ruling from Haojing, while Zhou Gong would continue leading the efforts in the east from Luoyi. So, after much discussion and considerations, Zhou Gong agreed to the arrangement and continued organizing the colonization and resettlement of Shang lands and Shang people from the new city at Luoyi. Now, together with a portion of the existing royal guards, the remnants of the soldiers that served under the three guards were reorganized into the 8 divisions of Chengzhou, known as the Chengzhou Ba Shi. With each division comprising of around 2,500 fighting men, these 8 divisions were deployed as a main defensive force of the new city of Luoyi. The former aristocrats and ruling class of the Shang dynasty were relocated to Luoyi to live under the strict supervision of Zhou Gong. Their former lands were either split up and absorbed into newly created states of the Zhou dynasty, or were just outright rewarded to the new nobles as their fiefdoms. With the Shang leaders and their influence effectively neutered in one fell swoop, the colonization of the eastern lands and the mass relocation of the native peoples began in earnest under the efficient organization of Zhou Gong, who was leading from the Zhou kingdom's new power center in the east. This mass relocation of native peoples and the seizing of lands to be redistributed to Zhou loyalists was a marked change from the early days of King Wu's reign, where he favored retaining regional leaders from the old regime to cause as little disruption as possible during the transition of power. However, the rebellion of the three guards changed their policy for good. The Zhou royal court no longer believed that the old Shang leaders could be trusted as regional lords, especially if they held strategically important lands. So the question now is, who would be a suitable candidate to take over the old Shang capital at Zhaoge and the lands that were vacated by Wu Geng and the three guards? Now enter Ji Feng, who was a ninth son of King Wen and was a younger brother of King Wu, born of the same mother. He was granted the land of Kang in the old Zhou homelands when his brother established the Zhou Dynasty, and therefore he was also known as康叔 or the Prince of Kang. Although young, he was a trustworthy and reliable member of the royal family who also took part in the campaign against the three gods. Now, Zhou Gong felt that he would be the most reliable person to be tasked with resettling the lands that was vacated by the rebels, and thus reappointed him from the land of Kang to be the new lord of the state of Wei. Since the population of Zhao was mostly made up of 7 clans of exceptional craftsmen of the Shang dynasty, it would not make sense to relocate all of them and lose their skills and expertise in the process. So Jifeng's priority as their new lord was to ensure their eventual acceptance of Zhou Ru and to contribute their expertise and their skills to the Zhou court. His other mission there was to act as the new eastern shield of the Zhou kingdom with the 8 divisions of Yin or the Yin Ba Shi under his command. Now being made up of the old state of Yin or Wukeng's 5 Den together with pieces carved out from the three gods' old lands as well, the newly established state of Wei was one of the biggest states under Zhou Ru at that time. And when Jifeng was residing at Luoyang before heading off to take up his new position, Zhou Gong actually paid 3 visits to his younger brother to spend time with him and to offer his advice on how to properly rule over his new lands. The content of these 3 meetings were later documented by historians and collected into the Book of Documents or Shang as 3 chapters. The contents of the first meeting between the 2 brothers was recorded in the chapter Kang Gao, or announcement to the Prince of Kang. Now in this first meeting, Zhou Gong advised his brother on the importance of good governance and his wish for his young brother to learn from the examples of their ancestors. He told Jifeng not to take their successes for granted and they are the results of generations of hard work and sound planning. He cautioned his brother not to let his newfound title and status get to his head, and they were only possible because of the virtuous reputation of their father and the years of relentless work their brother put in. He told his brother that he should rule benevolently like their father did and should be as diligent as their brother, the late King Wu. He should rule in mercy and educate with patience and have the openness to listen to all voices with tolerance. And only by following these examples will his subjects in the eastern lands be convinced of the legitimacy of Zhou Ru. On top of that, he should seek all ways and means to understand the sufferings of his people and do his utmost to make their lives better. Now, every complaint of the people should be taken seriously, no matter how small they seem. Now, if a small complaint is overlooked, it will surely fester and become a major issue down the road. Now, as the new ruler of the land, he should start by gently educating his new subjects on the laws and the rules of the land. But if they refuse to learn or refuse to follow the laws, then they should be punished accordingly. However, if a major mistake was made without intent, then he should use his discretion to mete out a light sentence as a warning. But if there was intent to commit the crime, no matter how small the crime was, then the perpetrator should be punished to the harshest extent of the law as a deterrent to others. Having said that, it was extremely important that every single case that comes before him must be investigated thoroughly and have all doubts removed before the sentencing. Now, the lives and the livelihoods of the people should never be taken lightly. Therefore, any official of the court that was found to be derelict in their duties should be punished to the harshest extent possible. Lastly, Zhou Gong reminded his young brother to preserve the sincerity and the warmth that he always had. Now, those are the qualities that will keep him comforted in the arduous job ahead of him and would definitely help him in building better lives for the people that will be living under his rule. He then ended the first meeting by telling his brother, "Oh, young Jifeng, remember that life is not eternal. We should all strive to contribute the greatest benevolence lies in the contribution of our lives. And the virtues we speak so much about is the bliss and the joy we feel when contributing with our lives for the peace, the prosperity, and the betterment of the lives of the people around us. Now, in their second meeting, Zhou Gong discussed the harms of excessive alcohol consumption with his brother and advised him to implement a strict restriction on alcohol consumption in his fiefdom. The content of this meeting was recorded in the chapter 九告, or announcement about drunkenness. Now, in this discussion, Zhou Gong concluded that one of the major causes of the Shang dynasty's downfall was their excessive consumption of alcohol. Now, everyone from the king down to the local lords and officials were alcoholics basically, and they reveled in their drunkenness. This phenomenon seriously impaired the Shang court's ability to govern properly and severely reduced their capacity in responding to emergencies. Now, apart from the social cost, the real economic cost in terms of grains was astronomical for an essentially agrarian society. Zhou Gong reminded his young brother that their father, King Wen of Zhou, had always advocated that alcohol be only consumed during worship rituals and important events. And the only reason that the heavens have allowed people to master the art of alcohol making was that it was required as a sacrificial drinks to be offered up to the heavens. But the Shang people indulged so much in this sacred drink that they lost their virtues and was thus punished by the heavens to lose their kingdom. Having said that, Zhou Gong also understood that alcohol played an important role in Shang culture and tradition, and therefore he only advised a restriction on excessive drinking and not to implement a blanket ban on alcohol totally. Now, for example, farmers were allowed a small drink if they had been diligent in their fields. Carriage drivers and merchants were allowed small drinks as well if they have completed their jobs. And alcohol is allowed to be offered as gifts to parents. And when there are joyous occasions in the family, drinking is allowed. Officials who have proved themselves with outstanding performances can be rewarded with alcohol. And if they were really exceptional, they could actually take part in official worship ceremonies and partake in the drinking there as well. In a nutshell, the key was not in abstinence, but in being disciplined in the consumption of alcohol. Any officials who were found to be drunk on the job or who malinger and cause trouble while under the influence of alcohol were actually punishable by death. Now, an interesting bit of information that was unearthed just a few years back actually backed the theory that this excessive alcohol consumption might have played a big part in the downfall of the Shang dynasty. And not only that, the rabbit hole actually goes just that little bit deeper than we previously thought. Now, a team of toxicologists from the Boston Children's Hospital actually ran some tests on bronze drinking vessels unearthed at the Anyang Inchi archaeological site. What they wanted to do was to find out how much of the lead content found in this bronze would actually be absorbed into the rice wine that were being drunk at that time. Now, the results were shocking, to say the least. Within 1 minute, they found 2,500 micrograms of lead per liter of rice wine. After 4 days in the vessels, this rice wine recorded 80,000 micrograms of lead per liter. For context, the human body's tolerance for lead consumption is 75 micrograms per day. So imagine drinking 40 times the tolerance level on a consistent basis over a long period of time. Now, the best case scenario under the circumstances would be severe lead poisoning. I mean, if you don't just drop dead and die straight out. So, what does lead poisoning look like? Well, lead poisoning symptoms will include mood disorders, joint and muscle pains, seizures, hearing loss, chronic fatigue, and difficulties with concentration and memory loss, among many other crazy symptoms. So that might explain many of the erratic behaviors of Shang kings in their later years, and why the Shang soldiers were generally relatively weak compared to Zhou fighters of the time. Now, the third and last meeting between the brothers took place on the eve of Jifeng's departure to the state of Wei. Now, this meeting was documented in the chapter Zicai, or Timber of the Timber of the Rotlara. Yeah, here. Now, Zhou Gong took this last chance to remind his young brother of the importance of his mission to stabilize the situation in his new fiefdom. He once again advised Jifeng to rule with mercy and benevolence and to use his own discretion in localizing Zhou laws to better suit the traditions of the local population. Now, his immediate priority should be the stability of the region rather than the full conversion of the people to Zhou culture and traditions. Now, Zhou Gong felt that Jifeng should start his rule by issuing a full pardon to all who were involved in the recently ended rebellion, and all but the most heinous of offenders should be forgiven for their crimes, and even those who were the worst offenders should be given light sentences. So, rather than a show of force through iron-fisted rule, it would be a show of mercy and benevolence of the Zhou rulers. Jifeng should gently educate and influence his people through this show of mercy and benevolence that the Zhou people were so well known for, and the people should be convinced to accept Zhou rule rather than be forced into it. Zhou Gong suggests to show the famed Zhou generosity by taking care of the widow and the pregnant, and to show them the Zhou kindness by supporting the orphan and the old, and to show them that the Zhou vision was to provide eternal care for its people and to give eternal stability to the realm. He reiterated that only when the people are convinced of the sincerity of the new rulers will they be willing, loyal subjects of the new kingdom. Now, previous generations of Zhou kings have laid down the foundations and they have done all the hard work to conquer the land. It is now up to them to bring stability and a better life to the long-suffering people of the realm. Jifeng, or Wei Kangshu, Prince Kang of Wei, as he is now known, did not disappoint his brother. He followed Zhou Gong's advice and worked diligently to bring his rebellious subjects peacefully under Zhou rule. And over the years, he managed to convince even the most stubborn of skeptics to accept that the Zhou kingdom was sincere in helping them build a better life. Now, due to the results he achieved in governing the state of Wei, Kangshu gained a reputation for being a just but merciful man, and he would later be recalled to the royal court and be appointed the Minister of Criminal Justice, or Sikou. Now, in this new position, he practically stood above 95% of the lords of the realm, and he also held the power and authority of life and death over them, on behalf of the throne, of course, but he never once abused this power and authority entrusted to him, instead serving as a beacon of justice for the Zhou kingdom for the remainder of his life. Now, if you enjoyed the story, it would really help the channel out if you could give us a like, comment and a share. And if you feel that I've been doing a halfway decent job of presenting these stories and would like to contribute to the running of the channel, you can do so on Patreon. The links are in the description box down below. And with that, thank you so much for your time. I'm Apingo, that Chinese history guy, and I will see you beautiful people out there, in the next episode.